Got it. All right. So this more, it's still morning. Yeah. A presentation on cybersecurity for small water and wastewater systems, which is a big deal. You may or may not be aware there was a recent kind of national advisory that utility systems are being targeted. So let me introduce Josh. Josh is a security analyst with the State Office of Cybersecurity. And you don't want to listen to him, so take it away.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, David, for having me. My name is Josh. I'm an analyst with the Washington State Office of Cybersecurity, and today I'm going to give a talk about some cybersecurity awareness things, and hopefully we can give some people some good insight into what's going on in the cyber realm here. So I'm just going to open up my chat on the side so I can see if anything pops up, and then I'll get started. Okay, great. Okay, so Washington State Office of Cybersecurity. Today we're going to be talking about
we don't see your
cyber aware.
We're not seeing your screen yet, Josh.
Oh no. Let's see. It says I'm sharing.
I'm seeing it.
Oh,
you can see it?
No, sorry.
It's on a different screen for you, right?
No, yes, it is.
No worries, no worries. So this talk is going to be about becoming cyber aware. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the governor put out a state proclamation that this month, October, is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So typically in October, you'll see our office and a lot of agencies around the country start doing these cyber awareness programs. So October in particular, be on the lookout for those because there's lots of good talks, lots of good resources floating around. Just something to keep in mind as we move through the session. And now I'll share a couple links about accessing those resources and where to find them, who's doing what, just so we have that information available for everyone at the end of this. At the end, I am trying to make this about a 30 to 40-minute talk. And the idea is there's a lot going on with cybersecurity. There's always a lot of questions. There's a lot of different paths and areas we can take, and everyone wants to talk about something different. So I want to give as much time as I can to our audience here to ask the questions that they want asked. So a little bit about myself. I'm an analyst with the OCS over here at Washington State. I've been with OCS for about a little over 2 years now. Overall, I have about 10 years in cybersecurity. Most of that's with the Navy. I was with the Navy for about 10 years, and for them, I've done intel research, incident responding, digital forensics, malware analysis, and that's how I got started in cybersecurity. After I left, I did do a stint in the private sector as a cloud compliance consultant, and that was mostly helping big cloud agencies meet those compliance standards, especially for frameworks that you might hear like FedRAMP or NIST risk assessment frameworks, things like that. So that's where my background comes from in terms of cybersecurity. Okay, so we have 4 big questions we want to answer with this presentation today. It's what does that cyber threat landscape look like? Who's responsible for protecting it? How do we get started? And what resources are available? So as we move through this particular presentation, I said earlier, cybersecurity is a huge field, lots of different areas. You have people that want to do hands-on keyboard. You have the social aspect of it where it's community building, and you have social engineering. You have the policy portion of it, compliance. So there's a lot involved with the cyber field, cyber realm, and we're just hitting on a few small portions of it. Each of these slides could easily be an hour to a whole day presentation talking about each of the threats. But really, we just want to give a small sample of what threats are relevant to everybody, what we need to do to sort of navigate those threats, and what are those resources to help people that maybe have small security budgets, don't have a security program, or maybe they do have a security program, but they need to learn or find some resources that can help them take that to the next level for them. Those are the kinds of things we're looking to do in this talk. So when we talk about cyber threats, there's so many of them, and I just wanted to list out a few here. These are titles you might see in the news: phishing, denial of service, 0-day, Trojans, keyloggers, spoofing, cyber stalking. data breach, malware, ransomware. So when we look at all these big fancy titles or names, we want to break it down into, to make it easy for everyone to consume. There's two types of attacks. It all boils down to, is this a technical sort of attack? Is someone looking at the ones and zeros and trying to manipulate your computer into doing what they want it to do? Or is someone trying to use that human element, that social piece to break that weak link in the chain, as it were? And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I highlighted three attacks here in particular, or threats, that we want to talk about for this presentation. And that's going to be phishing, spoofing, and ransomware. And the reason we want to talk about these in particular for this cyber awareness talk is because these are very relevant to everyone. We see these all across all our agencies, everyone that we see in the news, in the state. These are common threats for everyone. And in addition to that, they're pretty easy threats for threat actors to emulate and create. When we talk about phishing, that doesn't always have to be click on this link and now you have a computer virus, right? Sometimes it's as easy as click on or open up this email, and it's an email from pretending to be the director. Hey, can you send me your password so I can do this real quick, right? So big, broad field. It doesn't have to be very technical, and sometimes it's easy for folks to fall for. Spoofing kind of rolls along the lines of that example I gave, where someone's just pretending to be a legitimate source. And it's really easy to fool our end users with some of these spoofing attacks that we're seeing. And then ransomware. Everyone's seeing ransomware in the news. I'm not going to touch on ransomware too much because there is a talk after lunch today by CISA with ransomware. So I'll touch on it briefly. But if you're interested in ransomware, definitely recommend hopping on and listening to a CISA talk. Always good information from those guys. It's always good to hear what they have to share. So I'm going to jump right into some of these threats. And we're going to start with phishing. The next 3 slides are going to have a lot of text, but just bear with me. We're going to get to the basics of it. We're talking about phishing. The most common type of phishing we're seeing is it's from emails, and it's usually, I would say, one of 3 things. You'll either see an email that says, hey, click this link, or an email that says, there's this attachment, please open it, view it. Maybe there's links in it. Maybe it runs things in the background. Or it's an email that says, hey, I can't talk right now because I'm in a hurry, but I need you to do XYZ. Send me your password, buy some gift cards, right? These are the 3 real common types of emails that we see from organizations. And when it comes to detecting these emails, one of the best things you can do is talk to your users about this sort of attack. Do you see your emails that are coming through? These attacks always display a sense of urgency. There's links and attachments that you might not be expecting. These are all things to look for, right? You want to, if it's something suspicious, you can follow up with the person that you suspect sending it. By phone's always great. Although I guess my 4th bullet says, never call a phone number, including a suspicious email or reply to the sender. When we talk about calling a phone number, this means going to your known good security vendors, not necessarily something you see in like a signature block. You can always call your security personnel, a director, whoever you think that email's from, just to verify. And the last pointer we have is when you see links that you think are suspicious, you can hover over the links with your mouse. And a lot of times, depending on the email environment you're using, you might see the full link disclosed in there. If you're using something like a cloud solution now, like Outlook 365, sometimes those links are a little distorted now. So this pointer is becoming a little bit less useful for some of those solutions, because you'll see a lot of the Microsoft cloud kind of safety link where you'll see things like GCC and then the URL after that. So it's getting a little bit harder to use that tip, but still useful. And then when we talk about attachments, you want to look for some of those common themes. If you're not a person expecting to get invoices, then getting invoice attachments is suspicious. Another thing is not a lot of people work with what are called macros in Word and Excel. And that's the best way to think of that is kind of like a mini program that runs inside of an Excel document or a Word document that provides some functionality. There aren't too many folks that need that functionality legitimately, So if you happen to see a Word document that has, I believe it's just the letter M at the beginning or the end of the extension, then that's something to look for and consider just blocking altogether in your environment. Same with PDFs. You want to be on the lookout for that. And also just odd file extension names, ISO, ISM, these type of things that you wouldn't normally expect to get from someone to open up. All right, and that's a lot of information, and I think we're mostly done with the ones and zeros of things. Let's talk about the way people try to trick you. We're talking about finding things that people want to see and talk about. Our agency, we send out quarterly phishing tests to people, and one of the things that we like to use for our phishing test is, I think this last one, I sent out an email saying, hey, we're sending out free Seahawks tickets. Click this link to enter the raffle, right? It's relevant to a lot of people. They want to see a Seahawks game. And we end up getting, I think we send out maybe 5,500 emails to test people, and I'll get maybe 20% of those come back as clicked because people got excited. It's Seahawks tickets, and they don't look at the rest of the information when it comes to who's sending this. Are there things like typos in the email, right? So people are trying to relate to you, or they're trying to send some sense of importance or urgency. So another common theme we see a lot with these phishing emails is deadlines for sexual harassment training, right? It's a very important topic. No one wants to get a hit on the dink list for missing training, especially not important training. So this sense of importance, sense of urgency, this is how these guys and gals are trying to trick you into clicking on these links and doing these things. David, do you have your hand up?
If you want a pertinent real world example, I feel like about 3 or 4 months ago, our agency, and I suspect maybe others, got a raft of emails claiming to be from a tribe, wanting to talk about our cultural resources review for our project, right? It was nice and vague, but it's like, oh, you gotta respond to that. You can't ignore that sense of urgency. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And we see those all the time. And the hard part about these phishing emails is we're depending on not just the tools, right? We have things like you'll hear EOP and Defender and all these. What's another common one? I think KnowBe4 or something like that, for all these phishing solutions that help you detect these phishing emails. But the thing about those is it's hard for those tools to catch everything. So users are going to get a lot of these filtered down emails, and security teams like my team and our SOC, our security operations center, really depend on the users to identify these and let us know. Because when you let us know that these exist, then we can say, okay, we've seen these in our environment. We can set up rules to block emails that are the same as this one, but we're not going to catch things that we don't know exist yet. So it's really important that not only your users can identify these, but they know that, okay, we can feed this to a team that's able to send this to a messaging or a security team, and they can set up those blocks to help protect more users, or even sending out a notification to the agency saying that, oh, hey, there's been a string of this phishing email with this title and this content. Just keep an eye out for it, and if you see it, delete it, right? So it's really important that user awareness is a big part of cybersecurity awareness within an agency, or within an organization rather. So I have one quick example. All right, good, it is my example. All right, so here we have an example of a phishing email. This one's if it was coming to me from the CDC, it's one of those things where, okay, this email here doesn't look like it is an organization named at TLD. This isn't quite what I was expecting from a user that I would get normal emails from. I wouldn't expect to get something from the CDC. You don't want to really click links to attachments that you're not expecting, not usually receiving. All in all, it's just an odd message for me at the security team to receive without any sort of prior knowledge. So it's this sort of things you have to look for and then determine what your organization wants to do with it. And a lot of times it's going to be reporting it to the security team. If you don't really have a security team and you're a small organization, maybe just sending out a memo saying, hey, if you see this, please delete it. If you clicked on it already, let us know, right? Because then there's a little more investigation that's needed. What's this link doing? Is it something that we need to be concerned about? Because not all these links, when you click on them, go out and pull back malware. Sometimes they'll go to a site that's pretending to be a legitimate site saying, oh, you need to reset your password. Please put your password, your username and password here. And that's a way that people do this credential harvesting, where they're collecting usernames and passwords, right? They get you to go to a fake site, input that data, and now they can use it for later. Just things to keep in mind. The next thing we're going to talk about is spoofing. And spoofing's, especially since a lot of us have gone remote, spoofing is something that we see a lot with our reliance on technology, emails, phone calls. New folks are getting hired into the office, and you might not know who all works for your organization anymore. So it's really easy for these bad actors to call you or a legitimate employee saying, hey, I'm from the IT department. I need to know exactly what the serial number is on your computer and your username and password so I can set up things for you. These are another real common thing for folks to be aware of, especially when it comes to emails. It's always the, hi, I'm your director. I can't talk on the phone right now, and I don't really have access to my emails, but can you go ahead and, I don't know, buy me a gift card and take a picture of it and send me the front and back so that I can cash it in for an employee reward. Don't worry, I'll reimburse you, right? These are the common spoofs that we see a lot. So the importance here is keeping in mind that when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not always going to be ones and zeros. Sometimes it's as easy as someone's trying to call you as pretending to be one of your IT folks. Someone's trying to send an email, pretending to be a director, trying to get you to give them money. Right, so these are just all things to keep an eye out that we see a lot in the cybersecurity world. And along with that, I wanted to share, this is an example that came across my desk. What's today? It's Tuesday. It came across my desk within the last week, and I accidentally cut out the header here, but it was from it had a director's name from an agency, but rather than the agency email, it said @gmail.com. So right there, the user was already suspicious, because why is the director emailing them from a Gmail account, right? And this one, it just says, hey, I'm busy. I want to recognize that folks are filling out the survey, and I appreciate my staff, and I want to give them gift cards. Go buy gift cards. I'm busy at the moment, but the whole idea here is the person wants them to email them the numbers of those gift cards so they can cash them in later. And this isn't something that's hard or something that needs to be technical. They don't need technical skills to do, rather, right? This is as easy as a lot of directors' information that's available on the city websites, agency websites, right? It tells you who's in charge, and a lot of times we can guess their email address, right? I think OCS, we use a common email naming convention, first name dot last name at ocs.law.gov, right? So it's fair to say, okay, I would just take josh.eschenbaugh, and then I can make a Gmail account at Gmail and pretend to be Josh, right? So it's a real low technology type attack that folks are using, and they're using to great effect because it shows that sense of urgency. No time to think about if this is a legitimate thing or not. It's my director getting to me. I need to go get them those gift cards, right? So all things to keep in mind. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about it lightly, is ransomware. I feel like even though there's a talk at 1 o'clock, it kind of would be amiss to include it. Ransomware is a big threat, and it's something that you see a lot in national news. And it's something where part of the reason why it's a big threat is because not only is it stopping operations for things like, I think last year we saw the pipeline. One of the things we see hospitals getting ransomware where that's operationally, they're locked up. They can't perform their function. Another thing we're seeing is, in addition to that, is the money, right? It's the reason why these ransomware actors or threat actors are using ransomware is because it's very lucrative for them. If they can latch on to one large agency, organization, company, that's potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for that group. It's relatively easy to do, and it's so lucrative to the point that a lot of these ransomware groups actually have full-blown support centers for their victims, where if you were to capture ransomware on your computer as an organization, They give you a phone number. Hey, call our support center, and there's 20 people in a room that are guiding you through paying that ransomware, because it's that good of a business for them. And when we talk about ransomware, we're going to talk a little bit about more just kind of how to avoid it real quick, since I don't want to steal too much of the CISA talk here. And that's backing up your stuff, right? It's best practices, back up on a device that's not network connected. So we're talking about external drives, or maybe you have a vendor that lets you do like cloud backups or something of that nature. But if you do this, one of the most important things you can do is make sure that that drive is disconnected from that environment. Because there's been several instances where we'll go into a company, organization, group, and they'll be real proud about, oh yeah, we back up every 2 weeks and it's all saved on an external drive, and it's okay, great. I need to look at the external drive just to make sure, nothing's compromised, and they'll walk us back into the server room, and lo and behold, the external drive is plugged into the live system, and they don't unplug it because it's just easier to leave it plugged in and run that auto backup. And in those instances, a lot of the times those drives become encrypted and unusable for those organizations. So what we thought was a sort of a fail-safe backup plan for that group ends up being just another part of the problem and a nice paperweight for them. So that's kind of our plug on ransomware. We're going to move on, and we're going to talk about some of these things that we're seeing in the news. So all three of these headlines, all recent. I think one of these is from a couple weeks ago, I think. These are all things that are happening all the time. We see them all the time in the news, especially with being remote. One of the things we saw that hit the agency, not agency, but the state a lot, and continues to be an issue, is ESD scams, right? Unemployment. And it's not that ESD isn't secure or doing what they need to do. It's just that it's really easy for these cyber actors to go to this ESD website, make a clone of the website, say, okay, I'll make a website that looks exactly the same and tells you to plug in all your information. Just happens to have a different URL, and I'll send that to, I don't know, 100, 10,000, 100,000 people, because sending out mass emails isn't hard. And if 1 or 2 people clicks on my email and types in their password, that's great. I'm collecting 2 sets of unemployment checks, right? Because those people might not notice that, oh, this is a bad link, or this is coming from a bad source, but this website looks 100% exactly like the ESD website, is asking for the exact same information, right? It's that easy for these folks, these bad actors, to clone these legitimate services and put up these roadblocks for everyday citizens and users, which is why it's really important that cybersecurity, it's not just going to be the organization, the agency, whoever owns the operating system or the operational system to implement these things. It's the organization's job to help educate those users, help train everyone. Because a lot of the times you'll hear the phrase, oh, it's the user's fault, or oh, the user should know better. And that's not always the case. A lot of the times I'd like to say it's, oh, the security team should have educated its users so that they can be aware that this is an issue. Because people can't look at an email, and if they're not expecting or know what to look for in these suspicious attacks, then they're just, it's business as usual, right? Their job is to read an email, reply to it, read an email, click a link, do what they need to do. It's important for the security teams, for the organization as a whole, to just remind these users, hey, these are very real threats to our organization, and we need everyone's help. And the reason for that is actually on the next slide here, is when we talk about who's responsible for it. And you'll see this term a lot in cybersecurity, defense in depth. And when we're talking about defense in depth, we're talking about, okay, we have passwords, we have firewalls, we have web app firewalls. We made sure that no one can access the system unless they're physically in the building, right? When you walk away from your computer, you have to lock your computer if you're going to be away, for more than 15 minutes, things like that. And all those they're great techniques for building that security program and making sure that your systems, when left alone, are doing what they're supposed to be and securing your environment. The problem with that is that we have endpoint users, and when they're clicking on links, bringing down malicious attachments, all of this defense in depth, while it's still in place and can still help mitigate things, it's it's another way for these bad actors to get into your environment, and it's one of the easiest ways for them to manipulate themselves or manipulate the environment to get in and do what they want to do, right? They don't have to try and crack passwords or break into a system if they can email a IT administrator and say, hey, I'm working on this project for remote access. Can you send me the admin username and password? But the admin doesn't realize that it's a scam and they send it in. Well, okay, now there's a username and password, and that person, that bad actor, didn't have to do any sort of hacking, right? Unless I guess you can't hacking people. But it's one of the things where the user is always going to be the hardest part to secure in an environment, which is unfortunate because the easiest thing we can do is just talk to people about it. It doesn't have to be an hour-long training session. It can be as easy as, hey, just a reminder, if you ever see anything suspicious, let the security team know. Or if someone sees something, let everyone in the small group know, hey, there's this phishing email going around, or hey, there's this computer virus going around that people are saying we should patch to this version, right? It's all about talking. It's all about community. It's being involved. It's getting this weird sort of cybersecurity realm out of the hands of the cybersecurity specialists and into everyone's hands to understand that this threat landscape it's everyone's responsibility. It's important that everyone knows that it exists, but not necessarily have to fix it themselves. All right. So all that being said, cybersecurity, it's a huge field with a lot of different areas. I said before, we could talk about each of these slides easily for an hour, maybe a whole day. But the real question is, where do we start securing our environment? And I know that this is the small utilities group here, but really when it comes to securing your cyber or electronic environment, it's going to take the same approach as any regular IT system, with a few exceptions, right? For some of your equipment, it's going to be a little bit different. You're going to rely on some vendors for knowledge, things like that. But really, it comes down to these things, your technical and administrative implementations. One of the best things you can do is start with these 4 items. You want to make sure everything that's in your environment. And as easy as it sounds to say, oh yeah, we know all the computers and all the programs that we have, all the users that we have in our environment, you would be hard pressed to find organizations, small or large, that can do this successfully, because environments are very dynamic. They're changing all the time. There are entire companies that are dedicated to just asset inventory because how difficult it is for groups to handle this, right? And if you're looking to start this, you might be interested in some of those groups that do asset inventory if you're a really large group. But if you're a small group, it might be as easy as, okay, we'll maintain a spreadsheet and we'll work it to the best of our ability, right? So it really comes down to, you can't secure things in your environment if you don't know they're there. So building that asset inventory list is a great start to securing your environment and getting an idea of what's actually in there. You'd be surprised how many times we go into agencies and we say, okay, we're going to do what we call a discovery module. We're going to set up our laptop here. We'll plug it into your environment, and I'm just going to tell my laptop to go and say hello to all your devices just to see what says hello back and what exists. And we've seen things like we'll go to agencies, we'll see PlayStations and Xboxes plugged into the environment. We'll see old servers that when we ask, hey, we saw this server with this server name, does that mean anything to you? Oh yeah, that was supposed to be decommissioned 4 or 5 years ago. It's still plugged in. It's like, yep, it's still plugged in. I can't tell you where in the building it is, but I know that it's talking to my computer, right? So asset inventory, huge deal. And a lot of, if you're going to start somewhere, that's a great place to start. And that kind of ties into what we were talking about with doing discovery scans, risk assessments. It's another thing where if you don't know what's in your environment and you don't know what risk that your system has in terms of, if this happens in our environment, like a user clicks on a phishing email, or how open are we to this website going down from a denial of service attack, right? It's all about assessing what's in your environment, what your environment can and can't tolerate from a threat perspective. And if those threats trigger or are seen in your environment, what does that mean for your group? Does that mean you have to move operations to a different backup system? Does that mean operations are put on pause? So risk assessments are a great way of documenting and talking through those issues, not necessarily finding technical solutions, although that should be the end outcome for risk assessment, is understanding what those risks are and finding technical solutions to mitigate that risk. But that's a big part of looking at those physical items, the software items, and determining what risk that has in your environment, your organization. The next one here we have is planning. Planning is another just huge thing. It's having that book of, okay, we're prepared. We know what's in our environment. We've done our risk assessment. If XYZ happens, who are we going to call and what are we going to do? And this has to do a lot with, if something goes down, what's our downtime look like? What's our uptime look like? How quickly can we get services back online? What's our level of fault with losing devices, with losing data? If we have a ransomware attack, do we have a plan, or is our plan to pay the ransomware, or is our plan to try and decrypt our own data, work from backups, or is our plan to just not pay the ransomware, not try and unencrypt our data? We're just going to rebuild, right? What is the plan? And it's important to have that in place and start talking with those organizational leaders to figure out, if XYZ happens, what are we going to do? They're hard conversations to have, and they're hard plans to make, because a lot of the times folks just don't have the staff or the team that knows the answers, right? And that's when it comes to finding those resources and looking for other folks around you in your community that might have those already started for you. And then we talk about detection and monitoring capabilities. I see a question, I'm just going to answer it real quick. Is cloud storage affected? Absolutely. Oops, accidentally clicked in the wrong spot. So with cloud storage, I'm getting way ahead of myself. With cloud storage, really what we're looking at is there's a lot of different ways to implement cloud storage, and it just depends, because you might have a cloud solution where you're automatically backing up every hour, every 2 weeks, every month, right? And these different options get expensive over time, because pushing your stuff to the cloud, no problem. It's getting your stuff out of the cloud, that's where the cloud vendors start charging you a lot. So now organizations have to start thinking about, okay, how often are we going to push those backups? Because I think a good scenario here might be, we push our backups to the cloud every month, right? Or maybe we'll say once a quarter, because it's just too pricey, we can't do it. Well, if you have a ransomware incident, where does that ransomware incident fall on your quarterly updates, right? Is it, we just backed up and then the incident happens? That's great. We only lost maybe a few days worth of data and work. Or is it at the end of the cycle, we were getting ready to back up in two or 3 days, but since we got hit, now we're out 3 months of work or data, right? So cloud storage, a lot of different answers. Is it affected? I would say absolutely. And its level of effectiveness depends on its implementation. And there's a lot of different ways to implement that cloud storage piece. So it really just depends on what that backup cycle looks like and what that provisioning looks like for pushing those backups to the cloud. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the slide here. Where can we start? So in the last piece, we talked about the importance of user awareness. That is one of the most important things any agency can do, is make their endpoint users part of the conversation. We're not depending on users necessarily to find all the phishing emails or report everything, find everything. We don't want them sending out fake emails to each other to try and trick each other, right? But we do want them in the conversation as far as, hey, these things exist, and if you want to have a conversation about it, let's have a conversation about it, right? And we can do this through a lot of folks do annual training where they push out a computer-based training, or they have a computer-based talk, computer-based like virtual learning environment where they talk about things like phishing and storing your passwords and things like that. Phishing simulations. I know our agency does a lot of phishing simulations. Once a quarter, I'll send out my phishing exercises to anywhere between usually 5,500 to 12,000 people, and we'll see who's clicking, who's not clicking. And people clicking isn't necessarily a bad thing for those users. It's a bad thing for the organization. It's letting the organization know, okay, if we're at this percentage, like what's our tolerance? Do we want our users click? Ideally, we don't want any users clicking on the link, but we really want to see progression where we take that 25, 50% users that are clicking down to 1 or 2%, right? We want our users to know that these exist, and that's one of the things we can do that. And then tabletop exercises. Another big thing is tabletop. If you haven't done a cybersecurity tabletop exercise, they can be super easy, they can be super complicated. When we talk about easy, what we're talking about is we have a scenario. It could be a simple question on a whiteboard. What do we do if we have a ransomware attack? And you have all the deputies or directors or anyone that needs to be a decision maker in the room, and you talk, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to pay? Are we going to try and recover? Do we have processes in place to recover, whether that's decrypting our drives or rebuilding the environment? And what's that look like for being able to help our citizens that we're responsible for, right? Like, are they going to be affected by this? And it's as easy as maybe posting a question, like I said, but they can also be as complicated as, okay, we have our cybersecurity team. Let's have them do a training exercise with the IT admin team, and we'll basically have the in a controlled environment, we'll have the security team either ask questions or try to present questionable scenarios into our environment and see if the IT team knows who to talk to. Or you can have, there's companies outside of your organization that they run these cybersecurity, what are they called? Cybersecurity, like red team, blue team exercises, where sometimes it's question based, where it'll just be kind of like Jeopardy style, fun for the team to go through, do trivia and quizzes. Sometimes it'll be, hey, here's a environment that we made for you that's similar to your environment. We have someone trying to hack the computers. All the logs are available to you. You can look at this environment the same way you would back in your own office, and roll from there, right? So cyber tabletop exercise, there's a lot of ways to do it, but it's always worth the work, at least talking maybe once a year, get all those decision makers in a room and come up with a scenario. Ransomware, what are we going to do? Systems just doesn't have to be cybersecurity related. Maybe it's just operational. Maybe systems just start faulting and not working. What do we do? How does it affect our operations? It's always good to have that talk. And the last one here is bulletins and alerts. And this is going back to, you want to make that cybersecurity community. When it comes to cities, agencies, local governments, municipals, all that, you're not alone. It would be silly to expect a small city to invest millions of dollars in cybersecurity to create their own logging system, right? You don't have to do that. All these wheels are already invented, and the best part about cybersecurity is a lot of it's plug and play. You can pick whatever wheels you want to put on your car, right, or whatever vehicle you want. And people are usually really happy and really willing to talk about their product. Now, some people are always going to be selling you something, right? There's a lot of vendors out there, but as far as community goes, especially when it comes to like government communities, state, federal, whatever it happens to be, a lot of those groups want to help each other, and all it takes is an email to say, hey, I'm trying to build this program out. Do you have any templates for this? For instance, instant response plan. You can reach out to a lot of different groups and say, hey, I'm trying to build an instant response plan. Do you have a template that I can work from? That way I can get an idea of where to start. Absolutely, send me an email. I'll redact some stuff and try and help you out, right? It's all about community, user awareness, building these tools and things together and not having to reinvent the wheel. When we talk about bulletins and alerts, I'm more looking at like, you have groups like CISA that they're on track of things when it comes to this program has this vulnerability. They'll let people know. There's a site where they say, hey, when you're running this operating system on this version, make sure you patch or make sure you look at putting up these mitigations because these are the issues with it, right? It's a big community. Lots of people are already doing a lot of that hard threat intel, a lot of that vuln management for it, not vuln management, but vuln discovery for you. And the next slide here, I believe a PDF is going to be available of this, but here's just four quick links for things that can help you, right? So I already talked about CISA. Great resource, especially if you're looking for things like what vulnerabilities are out there, what you see something in the news, like there's this latest hack that's affecting all of these particular things. Like I think in the news the other day, we saw solar winds. Solar winds was a big thing, right? CISA took the lead and put out a lot of really good information related to that solar winds incident. They had calls where anyone that was state, local, federal government could call in and listen into their briefing saying, hey, if you're running these systems, here's some steps that you should do. If you need help, call us because we'll help you, right? So this is a great resource for information. Anytime there's a talk later today from them about ransomware. Anytime you can listen to any of their talks or get a hold of any of their articles, CVE information, like always worth the read, always worth the listen. The next thing I have here is NIST CSF. Okay, so the reason why this link is here is if you're trying to build your system, right? You're part of the thing we talked about is having it documented and planned out. This is a great start. Basically what this is it's a framework. It's a list of rules. A lot of these frameworks are a list of rules and suggestions that help groups kind of navigate what, at a minimum, what should I start implementing in my environment to start becoming secure? And this kind of ties in with compliance, right? A lot of compliance frameworks say you need to follow these frameworks, follow this rule. That doesn't necessarily mean you're secure, but it's a good start to moving towards being secure. So when we look at like this link, the cyber framework for CSF, CSF has, I think it's 93 rules outlined that say, if you're running a information system, you should think about doing an inventory. You should think about managing your passwords. You should think about having a call list, right? There's a lot of pieces that they have in there that organizations might not, and security teams might not think about right away, just because it's easy to get lost in the detail for a lot of these documentation and framework type things. So it's always a great way to look at that. And it's all risk assessment based. So it's all about looking at those questions, determining what that risk is associated with your particular information system. So a great start for anyone that's looking to get into documenting, looking into doing an actual risk assessment within their information system. Just a great start. And that kind of goes along the lines of the CIS configuration guidelines and benchmarks. So CIS, Center for Internet, is it Services Systems? Can't quite remember, but it's another great resource, because what you have here is not also a framework that has a list of, okay, if you want to be secure to a certain point, here's a list of rules. Make sure you reset passwords every 60 days, right? Things like that. They also have these benchmarks where and all these benchmarks is they say, if you have this type of operating system on this type of computer, make sure you have these options set. And that's a hard part for a lot of organizations, is determining, okay, I'm running these tools, but I don't know what options to set for those security functions, right? And you don't necessarily have to figure it out yourself. There's a lot of groups. CIS does it. I don't know if anyone's worked for the federal government for what's it called? SCAP? No. There's a lot of different groups that do the same thing, and it's all about benchmarking. You have this tool, this box, this piece of software. Here are the settings to make it more relevant for you, more secure for you. And this last one is, I just did a quick search for water utilities, small utilities, and it's all about finding your community, right? That's what this last one's about. It's someone's out there is trying to do what you're trying to do. And this group here, AWWA, they had a great toolbox already listed of guidelines that you can use, places to start, links similar to this, right? It's all about finding who you can talk to that's seeing things that are similar to you. And that might be within a smaller community, like the small utilities. That might be in a larger community, like, okay, well, what's the city doing? Are there groups within the city? What's the state doing? What are we doing on a national level, right? There's all these different groups, and it's important to try and be involved with all of them. It's all about networking when it comes to cybersecurity, because everyone in the cybersecurity field wants to help each other. Granted, some people want to do it for a little bit more money in terms of vendor relationships and things like that. But as far as cybersecurity, you'll find a lot of freeware, a lot of free communities, and just a lot of people that want to get involved, and they're this is their thing. They're excited and they want to meet you. And
So,
go ahead, David.
Josh, so a lot of what you've talked about today was information technology, the email systems, the communication servers. A lot of water and sewer utility, it's the operational technology. It's the control system that monitors the reservoir, that tells us when our well should come on and communicates to City Hall to tell us if we got a problem with the reservoir.
Mhm.
So what is it? Is it the same? Probably this, I don't know. Is it different when you're talking about an operational system like that, it's not emails, it's
Right. So that's a great question. And the answer is it depends on how that system is interworked, right? So if that system depends on an internet connection, right, for communication purposes, to reach engineers, and it's not necessarily a closed off system, then that system is probably going to need all of that front end technology, not necessarily emails, right? But like it's going to need that front end firewall. Maybe some of these systems are run through like a web interface, right? So those will need things like WAFs in front of them. So information systems aren't going to be built on a single technology like a lot of these like these meters and these operational specific platforms. Those will usually need to be protected by front end systems. And that's where a lot of this helps comes into play, because when we talk about CSF and we talk about these bench lines, it's not necessarily all email boxes, or websites. A lot of it's going to be networking gear or some of that firewall information. And another great thing about all of this is CISA has a lot of that infrastructure need too. So if you're running something that's very infrastructure specific, you're going to find a lot of those guidelines there to help as well.
Okay, and so just to pivot off that, if it's a small utility that's running this water or sewer system with this control system, and they've got a couple of employees, and they don't have there is not an IT staff. There might be somebody who understands computers, but they're not trained IT. Where do they start, or who do they talk to? In that case, you can't talk to your IT person about putting whatever a WAF is, installing that on the front end. Where do they go?
Right. So you have a couple options there, right? Part of it is reach out to those CISA groups and see if any of them can help you. Another thing you might consider is if it's something where it's critical, and you have the funding for some vendor resources, even just getting general consulting helps a lot. As far as the small team building them themselves, it's all going to come down to research and resourcing. And the great place to start with the research and resourcing is going to be that CISA group and that AWWA group. They sound like they're going to have the most water and utility relevant information when it comes to those systems, because it's going to be really hard to find those system specific systems in a community group at large, because a lot of groups you're going to find are going to be more network focused and more mainstream hardware focused, which means you're going to depend on those small communities for your reach out.
Josh, there's a related question in the chat, which you've somewhat answered, I think. There was an incident at a Florida water system recently where the water system controls were taken over, but the operators caught it.
Okay.
What is the best way, or the top 3 tips for small water systems to prepare or prevent that sort of thing happening?
Okay, great. Yeah, so that all comes back to understanding the system and how you can I guess more or less back it up the same way you would back up any sort of normal appliance. Is it something where it's going to need to be, you need to start considering, is it something where you need to think about hard resets? Is that a viable solution for your organization or your group? Is it something where cyber insurance plays a role in? Do you have a cyber insurer that you can contact immediately to get that information and that advice for? Because if you do have a cyber insurer, one of the best things you can do, and one of the things you really should do, is you need to stop everything and you need to call them, because every step you take after that is really going to change how the insurance group can help you, whether it's them paying to have a professional consulting and forensics firm come in to help you not only detect how it happened, but to help you rebuild that system. Or if they decide that, okay, you have the tools you need to rebuild it, go ahead and just reset from new, put these new implementations or new protections in front of that problem and move from there. So that would be my recommendation. It definitely is going to be determined, have those conversations early when we talked about like tabletops, like how prepared are you to bring that system back online in the event of either running from backup, factory reset, or working with data as is. And it really just comes down to that, working with your decision maker groups to determine what's going to be the most cost efficient, time efficient thing for your group to do. Let's see. And let's see, I'm going to do one more quick slide that kind of touches a little bit on that. If you are in any sort of state municipal group and you do have a cyber incident, feel free to reach out to the OCS. OCS, one of the things I hear a lot about from the community and the state is, oh, we didn't know we could call the state cybersecurity office. And while we do provide a lot more functionality for our agencies, we're here for all of these state, local, tribal, municipal, educational services. So give us a ring, give us a call, give us an email. We're always happy to help. At a minimum, we will provide a general consultation to give you either resourcing that you need in terms of, oh, you should go here, talk to these people, or depending on our bandwidth and the degree of your incident, we might decide to deploy people to your site or resources to help analyze those logs, help you determine, okay, how do we rebuild your group, right? The important thing is that if we can't fix the problem for you, we're going to at least talk to you and try and work through this issue with you. That way you can get the resources that you need. Always happy to help. Never hesitate to reach out to us for any cybersecurity needs, questions, anything. We're always happy to help. This number here, if it's an emergency, it'll go straight to either myself or one of our other on-call cybersecurity analysts. And that number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So never hesitate to ask. We're here for you guys. We're here for our agencies. And if you guys aren't able to fill your role to help our Washingtonians, then we're not helping you. We're not doing our job. We're here to help each other. We're here to help build this cybersecurity community. And along that lines, I'm just going to pull up. Not that. I'm going to pull up. All right, I'm just going to click and open up a new box. Give me 1 second, please. I'm going to close my PowerPoint real quick. So this month being Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we are all part of the Washington cybersecurity community. We have our website here. Can everyone see the website okay, I hope?
Yes.
So we have our cybersecurity website. This month is October, so we have a lot of things going on for cyber awareness. If you want to get part of that, training employees, training end users, is we have a cybersecurity escape room that folks can log on to. We have a quiz where people can hop in and kind of compete against each other for some questions. And we have we have 2 more presentations this month, and these are available for all of you guys for free. Anyone that wants to listen, the CISA, the State Chief Information Security Officer, is going to be online talking about, what's he talking about this time around? Cybersecurity awareness, explore, experience, share. And he's there, he'll answer questions, you know. We have Western Washington coming in to do a talk. So all these resources from us are available for you guys. We're always happy to grow that community, to talk to you guys, and do what we can to help everybody out. So I'm going to go back to my presentation real quick. And if anyone has any questions, I see we still have 5 minutes. I took a little bit more time talking than I wanted to, I'm sorry. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those now. If you haven't looked at the chat, I do see a couple folks are posting some more resources, some more groups. So that's great. Sure, definitely take the time to look at those. Okay, the SCADA systems. Yeah, with SCADA, a lot of the times, like the water controls, pumps, furnaces, things like that, it's going to be a lot of either front end networking, those firewalls and things, or so a lot of the times the way those get compromised too are with removable media, because a lot of those environments are closed off, right? So it's all about that training and awareness, understanding, okay, what can I plug in and what can I not plug in? Because the last thing we want is someone bringing in a compromised external drive, thinking that they're going to either take a backup or restore a backup, and that drive happens to have some piece of malware on it that's waiting to trigger and infect these systems, right? So it's all about user awareness and understanding how do users interface with that control system, how does the internet interface with that control system, and how do I act as that roadblock, instructor, mentor, that piece in front of that piece of equipment.
Josh, are you going to the chat room after this?
Yes, I'm going to try and find my way to that chat room here.
Right.
And that's a half-hour chat room, right, from 12:30 to 1.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I definitely plan on hopping in. So hopefully I can answer any questions that folks have.
And are there any other questions for Josh right now? Looks like not. Looks like not. So I am going to stop the recording.